Good afternoon, everybody. I said yesterday that Mr. Scheer does an excellent job at the last Prime Minister question period of the year, and in this building, they'll be renovating it for the next little while. But I wanted to highlight Mr. Scheer hammering Mr. Trudeau, and this is kind of debate hammering, right? So he's throwing out insults and whatever, but he's holding Trudeau to account. I'm going to type the question that's asked here so we know what question Mr. Trudeau is not answering, and I'm just going to show you the highlights. Mr. Scheer handles all of the questions for this question period, and Mr. Trudeau notes that halfway through or something like that. But I'm just going to show the highlights because it would be like a 25-minute or 30-minute video, which maybe it will be, who knows. But if I showed every single one of Mr. Scheer's interactions, some of them are better than others. So again, I'll show you the highlights. The link is in the description to watch for yourself. And here we go. Here's the first one.
The worst failure of this Prime Minister this year is the promise to balance the budget. The promise was made, but the Parliamentary Budget Officer tabled a report which forecast the deficit to $28 billion. Why did the Prime Minister mislead Canadians about balancing the budget? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our commitment in 2015 was to create economic growth to benefit the middle class and those working hard to join it. That's exactly what we delivered. By reducing taxes for the middle class, by increasing taxes on the 1% wealthiest Canadians, we brought in the Canada Child Benefits, which helped 9 families out of 10, and which helped lift 300,000 children out of poverty. We know there's still a lot of work to be done. Infrastructure investment, the fight against poverty, investing in our seniors and youth. We will continue. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians had a choice, and Canadians voted for a balanced budget. That was the promise that this Prime Minister ran on. And now we find out that his temporary and tiny deficits are now massive and permanent. They're not $10 billion, they're not $15 billion, not 20, not 25. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says they could grow to as high as $30 billion. Deficits today mean higher taxes tomorrow. Will the Prime Minister tell Canadians in what year the budget will be balanced?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one of the first things we discovered when we came to office in 2015 was that the Conservatives' phony balancing of the budget actually hurt Canadians. It hurt our veterans. It hurt our public service. It cut in Canadian border services and police services. They cut services that Canadians needed right across the country in order to present a phony budget balance just in time for the election. Well, we made a different choice, Mr. Speaker, to invest in Canadians. And what has that delivered? The lowest unemployment rate in 40 years and 800,000 new jobs in the past 3 years.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister needs to stop saying falsehoods about our record and start telling the truth about his record. It was the Conservative plan that left a balanced budget. You know how we know it was balanced, Mr. Speaker? Because the Finance Department said it was. His own minister's department told Canadians that the budget was balanced. We did it while lowering taxes and protecting core services for Canadians. But his reckless deficits are putting social services under great pressure. In less than 5 years, more tax dollars will go to the interest on the debt than is currently being spent on health care. When will the budget be balanced?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite wants to talk about the facts. The Conservatives under Stephen Harper had the lowest growth rate in Canadian history since the depths of the Great Depression. They added $150 billion to our national debt with stubbornly low growth to show for it. We made a different choice, and Mr. Speaker, Canadians supported us in investing in communities, in investing in the middle class, instead of giving tax boutique credits to the wealthiest Canadians. We focus on growing the economy for everyone. And
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is distract from his terrible record by saying things that just aren't true. The Conservative government protected Canada's economy through the worst global recession since the 1920s. We did it while cutting taxes and bringing Canada back to balance. But what he has done is racked up massive amounts of new debt. He inherited a great fortune, a perfect situation for the Canadian economy, a balanced budget and a booming global economy. He has squandered that and blown through the savings. When will the budget be balanced?
Right honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is very interesting. What we see from the Conservatives is a doubling down on Stephen Harper's economic plan, the plan that Canadians soundly rejected in 2015, giving tax breaks to the wealthiest, cutting things like veteran services, health care for refugees, eliminating the long-form census. These are the things that the Harper government did that they are once again running on, Mr. Speaker. They have no real plan for the economy. We have created 800,000 new jobs and have
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is double down on a failed plan of higher taxes and massive deficits, threatening Canadians as we head into difficult economic headwinds. In fact, the IMF said today that there are significant risks that he is worried Canada is not prepared for. But it's not a surprise that the Prime Minister is not worried. He's never had to worry about money. So he doesn't worry about what happens to Canadians when he blows through their savings. When will the Prime Minister understand that the federal budget is not a trust fund for his disposal?
Right honourable Prime Minister.
And I won't put us through listening to Mr. Trudeau's response because he doesn't answer the question. And another person asks the next question, so we're just going to jump ahead. So during the first exchange there, Scheer asked, you said that we would have balanced budgets in 2019. You said in 2015 that you'd have tiny little deficits, and instead we have a $30 billion deficit, which is 3 times Justin Trudeau during the election threw out the number $10 billion. That's 3 times that. And it's a massive deficit. It's a huge deficit. $30 billion is nothing to sneeze at. And Trudeau didn't engage with that question and instead highlighted proposed successes from his first year. Then Scheer said, we don't need to hear about falsehoods about our record. Be honest about your record. When will the budget be balanced? And then Trudeau invokes Harper for the first time, which I thought was funny. And eye-rolling. I mean, he knows that people are sick of this, right? He should know. And then after invoking Harper and talking about how little Harper's economy grew, Mr. Scheer reminded Mr. Trudeau that, yes, in fact, Mr. Harper guided Canada through the worst recession in modern times, the 2008 crash, and Canada came out on top. We were the envy of the world at that point in time because our markets were so solid because of the checks and balances we had in our system. And so it was funny to watch Mr. Trudeau not answer any of the questions. Here's fast forward ahead, and we are looking at talking about a carbon plan and a carbon tax, and this is Scheer holding Trudeau to account. So here we go again.
The jobs of the future. They don't see it to be as a priority, and Mr. Speaker, that's where they're wrong. Canadians know, from wildfires to floods to droughts right across the country, we need to act on climate change, and they are not.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's the Liberal government that doesn't have a plan to reduce emissions in Canada. All their plan is a tax grab. The reason why we know it won't reduce emissions is because they've given a massive exemption to the largest emitters in Canada. The full cost of the carbon tax will fall to hardworking Canadian families, commuters, soccer moms, and small businesses. And worse yet, we know now that the carbon tax will be higher in the future. So, will the Prime Minister tell us what is the full and final price for the Liberal carbon tax?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, if you'll notice, you'll see that the Conservatives do not want to address the question of what their alternative is, how they are going to fight climate change. We've been very clear. We're going to put a price on pollution. We're accelerating the phase out of traditional coal power. We're making historic investments in cleaner infrastructure. We're adopting regulations to cut methane emissions. We are moving forward in a way that is going to support families and protect them for the future. where the Conservatives have no plan at all, Mr. Speaker, and that's unacceptable.
Order, order. All members know that each side will have another chance to take part in this question and answer during question period, this process of debate. So I'd ask colleagues to try to be patient and wait for their turn. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's the Liberal government that has put a price of 0 for the largest emitters in Canada. They have granted a huge exemption to large emitters that can afford to hire lobbyists to get a special deal. Hard-working Canadian families, commuters, have to bear the full brunt of this Liberal carbon tax. And now we find out that the carbon tax will have to be even higher in the future. So if the Prime Minister claims that he doesn't mind getting questions, will he answer the simple question, what is the full and final cost of his carbon tax?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the Conservatives, we believe that emissions need to go down and that we need to continue creating good middle-class jobs for Canadians. So what the Conservatives are saying is actually factually wrong. We have set a target for industry to reduce pollution. If they fail to meet that target, they pay the price. If they do better, for example, through innovation, they are rewarded. Our plan will also give money directly to households where the federal backstop applies. The only mystery here is why the Conservatives refuse to have a plan themselves.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, they've granted a huge exemption. That is from their own documents. And when a company goes over that target, they don't pay a tax. They can purchase offsets. So they have come up with a scheme that allows the country's largest emitters to avoid paying the carbon tax. But that special deal is not available to hardworking Canadian families, commuters, suburban moms, or small and medium-sized businesses who have to pay the full brunt. We know what the costs are going to be today. What will the full and final cost be for the carbon tax in the future?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are two reasons why the Conservatives are so worked up about our plan. First of all, they have no plan that they can talk about. And secondly, in provinces where the federal backstop applies, Canadian households will be receiving more from the climate action incentive than the cost of pricing pollution. That means that the ones who will pay are the companies who pollute the most. Conservatives like Stephen Harper and Doug Ford and this current leader are so ideologically against any environmental protection, they want to take that money away from Canadians. While Conservatives want to make pollution free again, we're putting it...
And I'm going to stop him there. So I don't know if you see what he's doing, but instead of answering the question, he's rephrasing and saying you don't have a plan. It's basically a straw man argument, right? He's constructing this thing that he can attack, and then he attacks it while ignoring the original question. And if you didn't know that the question was what is the final cost of a carbon tax, you might be persuaded that the Conservatives are saying things that aren't factually true, except that they were asking a question saying, hey, what is the full and final cost of the carbon tax? And the response when you say that's not factually true to that question is silly, because that's not something you say to that. So back to the word salad, Mr. Trudeau. It's pretty clear that you are not very quick on your feet. I'm excited for the debates because I think Mr. Bernier and Mr. Scheer are going to have a lot of fun taking swipes at you. And while you can put together a lot of fancy sounding words, sir, you make no sense. You make no sense. It's not factually true. Get real. Okay, and I'm going to get to the next time index. Hold on. Okay, the next exchange is about Bill C-69. This is the anti-pipeline bill. The Bill C-69 talks about adding more checks and more ability to have groups oppose pipelines, etc. So the Conservatives have labeled it an anti-pipeline bill, and that's what this next minute exchange is. I'm highlighting it because Trudeau often talks about the Conservative government's failure to get oil to other markets other than the U.S. And the Conservative government worked on the TPP for most of its tenure, since I think starting 2010 was the first public I heard of it anyway, and it was kind of grumblings on Chans and Reddit, people talking about this awful thing. And in 2012, people got really upset about it and on Reddit and other places, etc. So it's not like the Conservative government wasn't trying and didn't have opportunities to hammer out a deal to get oil to other markets. A lot of people are opposed to the TPP, including myself. I don't think it's a good plan. I think it's a wealth transfer. And it's not popular, but still Trudeau's trying to frame this as a win, right? He's saying, you guys worked for 10 years and you had power and you didn't do this thing. And the reality is 70% of our trade is with the United States, and getting our oil down to be refined in the United States. They're partners up until electing Justin Trudeau. The United States and Canada were very close partners, and now Justin Trudeau is trying his best to destroy that. And Mr. Scheer continually takes swipes at Mr. Trump, which is a position I do not like that he takes, but neither here nor there at this point in time. Right now, Justin Trudeau is the bigger problem. So back to this. This is about C-69. Pipelines and markets other than the U.S. that Trudeau knows he has very little standing on, but he's still trying to spin this into a win. And the media will follow that drumbeat. But I'm here to show you he's ridiculous. He's ridiculous.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is try to convince Canadians that his reckless actions haven't had an impact on the energy sector. But here's the reality. Under the Conservative government, 4 major pipeline projects were built by private sector dollars, increasing our capacity to ship our energy to markets by over 1 million barrels a day. There were 3 pipeline projects on the book when he took over. 2 are completely dead, and 1 is on a lifeline with no plan to move it forward. So, will the Prime Minister do the right thing and scrap his No More Pipeline bill?
Right on the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've known for a long time, listening to the energy, that their number one priority is getting our oil resources to markets other than the United States. That has been something they have asked for a long time. Stephen Harper and his Conservatives worked very, very hard to try and get that done, and they didn't get it done for 10 years, Mr. Speaker. We are moving forward in a significant way, in the right way, understanding that working with environmental groups, respecting community interests, partnering with Indigenous peoples is the only way to get things done right.
The honourable member for Jonquière, Mr.
Sorry about that. I thought that was still Mr. Scheer. But again, he's talking about allowing every man and their dog to have a say in the pipeline, and that is counter to getting a pipeline built. And we've built pipelines responsibly. The Conservative government has been able to, I've said before, their track record on that is indisputable. They have a history of getting pipelines built, getting oil to market, and building Canada through those proceeds. And Quebec and all of Canada should understand that. And Mr. Trudeau is purposely muddying those waters. The reason that I kept running, and I'm looking at my notes, is this is another MP, an NDP MP, talking about how Liberals always take the side of corporations. But this is about Andrew Scheer, so I'll get to the next Scheer clip. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to leave it after this exchange. I showed you this exchange yesterday. It has to do with the illegal border crossers and the Safe Third Country Agreement. I thought Scheer did a good job here. Still, we could be hitting harder. But overall, and this is what you're seeing when somebody's being held to account in the House of Commons. The unfortunate part is usually it matters. Usually the MPs who are in the caucus are listening. And it's unfortunate that they're not paying any kind of attention, because the things that Justin Trudeau is allowing to happen on behalf of and to Canada is appalling. 3 years of the mess he's created. It's terrible. Anyway, this is Andrew Scheer on the illegal border crossers and the Safe Third Country loophole and that hornet's nest of political topics.
Mr. Speaker, not only is this crisis, which has been created by the Prime Minister, will it cost $1 billion, but it is also difficult for people living near Roxham Road. It's a crisis, and some of the so-called temporary shelters have become permanent. And there are bills to be paid by the provinces. The Prime Minister has to help the provinces and fix this crisis. The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that our immigration system is compassionate and fair while ensuring our border has integrity and while protecting our communities. We've invested $173 million in border security to speed up the processing of asylum claims. The Conservatives cut the budget of the CBSA by over $300 million, cut services to refugees, and they want Canada to violate international law. We will continue to apply our laws and respect our international obligations. The Leader of the Opposition.
Canada's immigration system should be compassionate and fair. There's nothing fair about crossing through an illegal border crossing from a safe part of upstate New York into Canada, jumping the queue, skipping the line, and forcing others to wait longer because more and more resources have to go to those coming into Canada illegally. That is the legacy that this Prime Minister caused with his irresponsible tweet. And literally, they have done nothing to stop the problem. Instead of just adding up the costs, will they finally do something to stop the crossings themselves?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that our immigration system remains fair and compassionate, all the while ensuring the integrity of our border and the security of our communities. We will continue to ensure that Canadian law is applied and that our international obligations are respected. I will also highlight, Mr. Speaker, in this, the last opportunity for PMQs in this House. It's a pleasure to be taking questions from everyone, not just the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker.
I think members want to hear the next question. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I have good news for the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. After the 2019 election, he won't have to answer questions he doesn't like in this House. Mr. Speaker, he has to answer for the fact that he has done absolutely nothing to stop the illegal border crossings into our country. Now, he can try to hide the truth and say things that aren't true. He knows it was the Conservative government that added 26% worth of Canada service agents at our borders. It's Conservatives who are proposing real solutions to solve this problem. When will he do something about it?
Yeah. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the opportunity to present our plan to Canadians next year in the federal election and look forward to going against what seems to be the Harper Conservative platform once again. Mr. Speaker, the Harper Conservatives cut $390 million.
And I'll leave it there. You can watch the rest of it. That is holding somebody accountable. That is getting in some good jabs. I thought Scheer did a good job. Justin Trudeau can't defend, so he deflects, changes the subject, constructs a straw man, or just calls names. And it's should be below a prime minister. This is called question period. It's not called campaign period. And that's clearly what Mr. Trudeau is trying to do. He's trying to, anytime you touch anywhere close to a campaign talking point, he said, they're trying to make pollution free again, which is just a bad play on Make America Great Again. Like it's bad. Because pollution isn't CO2, but I don't want to get into that at this point in time, but they're conflating again what these things are, and Scheer holds him accountable by saying, how much does your carbon tax cost? And Trudeau tried to again construct a straw man saying, you have no plan, but he didn't answer the question. The carbon tax will make everything cost more, and that is for everyday Canadians to pay. Your business has to pay those taxes, but multinational corporations don't. They get exemptions. They can just not have to pay. It's incredible. It's incredible. And people are being lied to by the media because the media is being paid by the Liberals. Maddening. Maddening. So when Mr. Trudeau stands up in the House and blames Mr. Harper for all the ills of Canada and refuses to say the leader of the current opposition's name, Mr. Andrew Scheer, right? That's, again, below a prime minister. He should be, more respectful than that. So I'm looking forward to the debates. I think that the debates are going to be where people shine and where it becomes very clear that Justin Trudeau doesn't have space, because I don't think that people want to hear why Canadians should give up their sovereignty and why we should be paying more and more of our tax dollars to house more and more non-citizens. I think that loses the debate. I think people listen to that and go, wait a second. And people can be compassionate, but solving the problems of the third world is not, or the solution to the third world is not to import it here. It's to solve it there. You can't fix it here, right? All bringing all of those people does is hurt their country. It removes the movers and the shakers, and I've made this argument before as well. So there's a lot to happen. There's so much time between now and October 2019, and more people are getting more and more interested in Canadian politics. So that's good for Canada, because the more people who are paying attention and the more people who know clearly what these people are talking about, the more honest the conversation they have to have on the debate stage. Maxime Bernier makes that debate stage more honest just by being there. They're going to try and stop him from being there, which is going to be interesting to watch. But I'm interested. I'm interested in all of it. I'm here for the whole ride. I hope you are too. So link is in the description. Have a watch. I don't mind saying Andrew Scheer does a good job here. He does a good job here. This is what his job is. He has to hold Trudeau accountable. He has to explain clearly what he's doing, Trudeau is doing, and what Scheer would do differently. That's his job. I'm glad he's doing it. So good job. And Bernier's job, your job right now, sir, is to keep him honest. Keep Mr. Scheer honest. Keep the House as honest as you can. And ask the questions that people don't want to ask. And endure the jeers that this side insists on throwing your way, and the NDP too. Because jeers or no jeers, you do represent a growing amount of the populace. So sorry about that. You do represent a growing amount of the populace. There we go. I said it better that time. And that's necessary in a democracy, even if it's only 6 or 7 or 1 or 2%, right? Being small does not equal not being relevant or not counting. So, hey, that's my piece today, and I've got the Bernier video to do, and that'll probably be tonight. So I will be doing a Bernier video, and yeah, catching up. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon.